So here we are finally at my so-called big project, which now should be a bit clearer why I've called it that. Instead of just one film, it's two, plus a lot of supplemental research to back up my points. I also made sure that I watched them back to back so that it's entirely fresh in my mind that, whatever happened in this one, compare it to that one, etc. And in fact, the first time I thought of this idea, I actually did that in a particular order. As an experiment, I swapped it round. And it's made me realise something, but we'll get to that a bit later on. So let's talk about The Things, I guess, from 1982 and 2011. The 1950s Thing from Another World is its own beast, so we'll leave that alone. But the 82 version was directed by John Carpenter, with a screenplay written by Bill Lancaster. Stars Kurt Russell, Keith David, Wilfred Brimley, and Jed the dog. Yes, I gave the dog a credit. The 2011 version was directed by Matthias van Heiningen, written by Eric Heiserer, starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Joel Edgerton, Eric Christian Olsen, and Christopher Hivju. I think I've said that as good as I can. Both were based on the story by John W. Campbell, who goes there as well. But this was something I wanted to do ever since I saw a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff for the 2011 prequel. People keep calling it a remake. It's not, it's a prequel. Let's call it what it is. It's not trying to remake the original at all, and I think that's a lot of people's misgivings as well. This was meant to fill in what happened at the Norwegian outpost before it spread to Outpost 31. This was not meant to remove what had happened before. It was meant to be a love letter to it. It was meant to be an appreciation of it. And like I say, the passion is there. There's certain moments that you're just like, I see what you did there. There's a lot of work that went in to recreate, from what we saw in 82, the burnt down and destroyed Norwegian outpost. They recreated everything as much as possible. There's even a line late on where they've got the axe in the door and Joel Edgerton's about to wrench it out. It's like, no, leave it there. And that almost feels like the filmmakers going, no, that has to be there, so that it's there when Kurt Russell and crew see it. And I love that. The biggest thing, one of the greatest reasons I wanted to make this video was to make sure people were fully cognizant and aware, I think those mean the same, that there was a lot of passion, there was a lot of love for this project. And one of the biggest parts of that was the fact that they wanted to, I guess, pay homage to Rob Bottin's great physical effects, great practical work, by doing everything as practically as possible. The idea was, put everything out there in practical and maybe touch up some of the moments. If you maybe need to transition from a normal human to a thing, you can't really do it without perhaps some little CGI blurring, I guess, of the lines. And that's what they wanted to do. That was the original drive. ADI, Amalgamated Dynamics, by Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis, who have done so much work in various films that you've probably seen if you're into horror and stuff, Alien being a big franchise that they've had a hand in. They did some great work. If you can find them probably somewhere on YouTube, bits of the behind the scenes work, and you can see a lot of the practical stuff they did. There's an actual practical dual face, as I call it. I don't know what everyone else calls it. The melding of the two faces that we see the burnt version of in the 82 version. There's a practical version of that they've created that's very close. That's it still looks like the actors in the 2011 one, but it's close to the original as well. But no, they decided to create this awful beast that just moves wrongly and doesn't feel right in the scene. That was all Universal. I don't want anyone to throw hatred at, Matthias van Heiningen, because directors often get it hardest, but at anyone involved in 2011, apart from Universal. Tell Universal they got it wrong, by all means. Because the studios were like, nah, we'll do it CGI, it's better. That's what everyone's doing these days, do it CGI. And that was a bad idea. That was a very, very bad move. Now, I did say that I watched them in a particular order, and the first time I watched, I did it, if you will, chronologically for the story. So I watched 2011, and then straight away, queued up, I'd got 1982 ready to go. And I loved it that way round. I got the backstory, and it was like, oh, that's the ice thing that the thing threw out of. And it was all there, and it was brilliant, and it worked so well. If you hate the 2011 version ever since you've watched it, as long as you can let a couple of things slide, just watch it before the 82 version, and I guarantee you will like it more. because this time around I watched it chronologically by order of release. And 2011, I was just turning off and not really paying attention sometimes. I guess it's like if you've got a meal, I think a lot of people say don't eat too much of the main before you've had like the sides, because you won't finish the sides. And unfortunately 82 is the main, it's the steak or whatever you love. But 2011's just like the peas and the fries or chips or whatever, you know, whatever you've got at the side of that, or mashed potatoes, whatever you like. And you like that still, for the most part, but it's not the steak. But you enjoy the steak more if you've got it left at the end. You've got something to go for. You've got this tasty morsel to come to once this is done. But that's the idea here. If you watch it in the order of release, which granted you have to the first time, you do lack an interest, I guess, in 2011's version. You just feel like, oh, they're trying to do that bit, and they're doing that bit. Oh, look, they've kind of recreated that, well done. But watching it the other way around is so much more rewarding and so much better. I loved it. The fact that there was so much attention to detail made. I did think that the 2011's version was a lot more insectoid, but with the Norris spider head thing, I guess it was always kind of insectoid. It was just less obvious. But there is a lot to love here. There's a lot of love given to it. You know, we know the 1982 version inside and out. We know the quandary of, is Childs a thing? According to additional materials after the fact, like comics and stuff like that, yes, he was. But we can still enjoy it even knowing the beats and things like that. But like I say, the 2011 version is still flawed. The whole thing with the can't replicate the metals and the whole earring thing, it was like, that was almost trying to retcon the idea that Childs might not have been, because I'm fairly sure Childs is wearing an earring in the last thing, but he put it in the wrong ear, so it, you know, it could have been, oh, we made sure to put it in the right ear this time. But there's a lot that really does show that they cared. And it saddens me that a lot of people don't like this. Like, there's a lot of people in this film who are very endearing, if you will. They're captivating. They've got so much charisma. Whenever they're on screen, you are looking at them. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, for one, and particularly Christopher Hivju. He's got one of those faces that just draws you in. He's so good at conveying, you know, nuance and emotion. He's great, and I love him in everything. He's got a great comedy sense as well, which always helps. But these people wanted to do something good here, and you could tell that. From the actors all the way down, everyone wanted to do the best homage whilst giving a bit of further backstory. And I respect that a lot. This is why I'm defending it. And yeah, if you link the two together, I'd love a cut, and I know people have cut the intro particularly together because the ending of 2011 perfectly melds into the beginning. It's made for it, that's why they did it. But I'd love a cut that you start the 82 version, and when they go to the Norwegian thing, you get that backstory in the base. You know, maybe like you start a bit earlier with the helicopter thing, but you don't know what's going on yet. So like, you know, they go to the base and then you show some of this film in flashback. Cut maybe, you know, do a bit more of the base, a bit more of this in flashback, and so on and so forth. You just put the bits in that, you know, help further what happened here. So we've got a sense of what's going on. They haven't, because we're seeing these flashbacks, but we know what happened. So when we see it taking out, we're like, oh no, of course it's that thing, yeah, because... And we're building these connections, and we're like, oh, this is exactly what happened before. Oh, how can they fall for it twice? Humans are stupid. We deserve to be wiped out. And I think that would be the ultimate cut. Now, I've never seen a version, and I don't think I can really justify, you know, taking the time to make it. But if someone out there wants to or has, please let me know and let me see it, because I will definitely tell if that's a better version. The biggest problem, or one of the really obvious problems, I think, with the 2011 piece, whilst I'm saying I defend it on certain grounds, one of the biggest issues was the ending. The pilot thing was meant to be there. It was kind of a very symmetrical, almost horrifically beautiful, I guess, kind of creature that was actually a thing. It had to perfectly replicate the thing that piloted this ship because it worked on some neural interface. That was the idea. So it had to make sure it was exactly right. It couldn't be slightly off by any stretch, so that it could make sure it could fly. This is what it was trying to do, supposedly. But then, again, it all changed. The ending, it became this weird creature that was just horrible, and the weird Tetris thing that people call it. It just didn't feel great. It didn't work at all. It just was horrible. We have a weird thing in our brains where we remember the last thing most because we work in a very linear chronology. So recent things are generally more memorable and stick with us. So we remember endings of films. This is why a lot of endings are big spectacles, because we want to leave going, yeah, that was great. With this, though, it didn't work that way. The big sort of spectacle ending just fell flat because it was terrible CGI, and it wasn't technically what the actors were relating to and reacting to. I did like the fact that they sold the idea that Joel Edgerton's character, Carter, or Carter Thing as he was now at the end, had to destroy another thing to sell the idea to Kate that he wasn't a thing. I like the fact they included that nuance, because we see in the 82 version, it will not destroy itself. This is why McCready, when he comes in, is like, I'm willing to like just blow us all to kingdom come. That to me was a case of, you're not the thing. And no one else made that connection. None of the other guys in the base were like, yes, okay, if you're wanting to do that, you're probably not the thing. But there's so much, like I say, that could have been better, and really was better if they'd have gone with the original vision. So I'd say go and watch the 2011 Thing, and immediately after watch the 1982 Thing. And if you don't come away thinking, okay, that was better than I remembered it, I'll be quite surprised. Obviously, if you're, a devout Carpenter fanboy and you really just hate it because they didn't need to do it, etc., etc., I'm not sure that would work for you, granted. But if you're at least willing, I strongly recommend doing it. And hey, if someone makes a cut and I'm aware of it, I will put it in a pinned comment or something like that, so you can watch that and see if that's better. And I'll maybe do a second video if someone does. But I want to say the music was a great thing in this. We all know that boom, 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 that very haunting kind of thing. And it feels very Carpenter, but no. It was Ennio Morricone. That surprised me. It doesn't feel at all like a spaghetti western soundtrack. But I like the fact that Marco Beltrami did use some of that as well in the 2011 version. I loved that. That was a great thing, the fact that they kept that musical sting. And it's quite weird that I've chosen to do this. Like, when I originally came up with the idea, we both still had Wilford Brimley alive and Ennio Morricone. But as of this going live, they passed about 2 or 3 months ago, respectively. It's almost like felt like I was waiting to do it as a tribute to them. But there is one additional negative I want to say about the 2011. Like I say, I still defend it, and I think if you watch it in the right order, it works. But it does a misdirect twice. Now, the first time, it's really clever, because we saw in the blood test scene, Palmer, when it came to the point of his blood about to be tested, he looked very shifty, and then did the whole shaking thing when it did the jump, etc. And it was an horrific scene, but he did that. When we see Griggs and Olaf going in the helicopter, Olaf looks very ill, looks like he's kind of, possibly going to turn into the Thing. And Griggs is all like, no, chill out, man, are you okay? And then he does the head split thing, which again, looks so much better in practical. And that moment was great. Unfortunately, shortly after, we had the Juliet thing, where it was like, they're trying to make it seem like she's on side, but no, she's going to turn, isn't she? They unfortunately realised they had a good thing with that scene and tried to use it too quickly again. Having Mr. X in something like this is great. It works really well. But having it too often desensitizes us to it. So that was one that didn't work very well. I mean, it's still a horrific scene, her face still there, kind of upside down. The moment of her reveal was just like, get on with it. She's the Thing, come on. And that didn't work very well. Again, it was also about keys as well, so it was almost like they were trying to nod back. It's like, sometimes they were trying too hard, and I do concede that. I do accept that. But again, a lot of that came from a place of love. It came from a place of respect. Like I say, they weren't trying to do a remake. They weren't trying to do anything to step on the toes or delete any of what had happened in 1982's The Thing. They were doing an interesting idea. What happened to this Norwegian outpost? Because we've all probably wanted to know it in some way. what actually happened here. We can piece it together from what we know, but we don't see it in full. And because of that willingness, because of that desire to do something that could add to this world, to this universe, to this film, I will defend it to the hilt, warts and all. But like I say, you'd need to watch it in the right way. So that's all I want to say about The Things, I think, for now, like I say, unless I see a brilliant cut. But this is going to start the trilogy that I sort of briefly mentioned, I think, a few weeks ago. Because The Thing of 1982 was part one of John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. I've only ever seen two of them, the beginning and the end. I've never seen the middle one, Prince of Darkness. So between now and next week, I'll have watched it and I'll be giving my thoughts on it, and we'll see how much I like it. So I hope you'll join me for that, but until then, thank you very much for watching, and as always, take care. Are you sure you're really you?